Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for being here at my session at SQL Bits 2024. This is website analytics in my pocket using Microsoft Fabric. My name is Cathrine or Cathrine Wilhelmsen. I'm from Norway. I work in a company called Evidi as a lead consultant slash solutions architect slash tech lead. I do all the things. I also run a community conference back home in Norway called Fabric February. You might be able to guess when that was and what it is about. I do enjoy everything related to the community. So I love speaking, blogging, organizing events. I call myself a chronic volunteer, and because of that, I have been a Microsoft Data Platform MVP since 2015. If you want to follow me, you can find me on LinkedIn. I blog on catherinew.net, and you can find me on the social media, Twitter and or Blue Sky at Cathrine W. So Fabric, are there any of you who have not heard of Fabric so far? No hands? I'm guessing you have all seen some kind of version of this slide, so I'm not going to go through that. Quick overview, lots of different experiences, and you can do a lot of things in one unified interface, basically. It is really fun to work with, and I enjoy just trying out different things, which is why I made this session as well. So what I built was, you can kind of see that. I have my own website, I have my own blog, and obviously as a blogger, you want to keep track of the stats. You want to see how are you doing, how are you trending, who's visiting, what are they looking at. So my blog is hosted on Cloudflare. It's completely free, by the way, so if you are looking for a place to host your blog, Cloudflare is pretty cool. They have an API where you can pull out all your stats and all your analytics, and that is what I did inside of Microsoft Fabric. So I got all the daily stats and all the hourly stats. I put that into a nice little model, very simple. We're not following any real architecture principles here. I just wanted to see something so I could keep track of my own website. And the reason I built this, there were a couple of reasons. First of all, back when I started doing this, I wanted to phase out Google Analytics. There were some discussions about, was this even allowed in Europe because of GDPR and so on. Many discussions that came out when I first built this session. So that was one of the key things. I wanted to remove that. I don't want any trackers on my website. And Cloudflare offers free privacy-first analytics. So they give you all the stats you need. They give you some basic information about where people are visiting from, which browser they use, but they don't store any IP addresses or anything like that. And because everything is hosted on Cloudflare, they also own my domain. They can kind of see that from their end without me having to push Google Analytics onto my website. So I moved to Cloudflare in September 2023, and that's when I started this project. So the problem with that was that you do get a lot of information out of the box when you're using Cloudflare. They do have a dashboard. It looks pretty nice. You can keep track of things there, but they only store the data for 30 days. And that is kind of an issue when I want to see, how am I doing now as compared to a year ago, maybe. So I built it in Fabric because I wanted to have kind of a project that was a real-world use case for me. I wanted to use it on my own. I wanted something that was pretty in pink. It does not look pink on the screen, I think, but that's what I wanted. And I did it because it was fun. It's just a nice little hobby project that allowed me to work with Microsoft Fabric without having to think of something that I deliver to a customer. And I mentioned that I'm getting my data through an API, and that is GraphQL API. Have any of you worked with that? Yeah, I see a few nodding heads. I was completely new to this back then, so most of the time I spent was just figuring out, okay, how do I actually get my data out of the GraphQL API? How does it work? And that means that they have one single endpoint for all the API calls, as opposed to having those different URLs. And then you're passing in the queries that you want as a JSON object. So that was just the main part of this for me. The whole Fabric story was pretty easy. This part was a little bit more difficult for me. And after I got all of that data, I ingested that data using pipelines to get it into my OneLake, my Lakehouse environment. I then visualized the data using Power BI, and I used the app on my phone so I can keep track of the stats, hence website analytics in my pocket. So let's just go and demo and look at how I built this. So the first things first, I'm going to show you how the graph QL query looks like and how we actually go ahead and use that. So if I zoom in just a little bit here, I do not need this one there. There we go. This is one of the queries that we are working with. So this just pulls out all of my data. So I'm passing in my account tag, just my Cloudflare account key. I am passing in a from date and a to date, and then I'm getting out all the information that I can get from this API. So I am getting information about, I get the date, of course. Let's switch this to pink, actually. Then I'm getting the number of page views and requests, and also the unique visitors. And you can see here that I do have a few things based on the browser that my visitor use and the countries they are from. I have not yet really looked into that. I was mostly interested in the numbers. Are the numbers going up or down? Just fun to keep track of that. So when I pass this query into the API, I get something back that looks something like, let me see if I can go all the way up. That looks something like this. So it returns for each date, in this case, since this, oh, did the sound change? Oh, okay, it sounded different. Okay, so for each date, I get the number of page views and so on, which browsers people are using or browser families, and then I get from the different countries they are from. And I also get, all the way at the bottom here somewhere, a lot of countries, just the number of page views and requests. So page views are where people actually load the page, where requests are just all the things they are pulling out. So that could be like the pictures and so on. And also the number of unique visitors. So this has everything I need. No, I don't need to know anything more about the people who are visiting my website. So the next step is to go ahead and pass this query into the pipelines to get that data back. So that is where we are going to switch over to my Microsoft Fabric environment. In here, sure, you've seen all of this before. I am just going to go straight into the data factory experience. And I can look at my, let's go ahead and open my workspace and look at my pipeline for loading daily stats. So even though you might not be working with the same API, you have the same kind of use case that I did, hopefully this can give you an idea of how you can build your own kind of very simple project. So the first thing I do is to set the date. I run this every day. So if we are on the current, if I choose to load it just automatically, I say to go ahead and use the current date. But I can also override that. So if something goes wrong, I have to rerun a pipeline for a previous day because I can get the data the last 30 days. I can just choose to override that, say that I want to use a custom date, and I send in my custom date. So the first thing I do is just to figure out, okay, are we using the automated today's date or the custom date that I am passing in? After that, we go ahead and load our data. So I'm just going to expand this activity pane. And we can go ahead and see that I am connecting to my Cloudflare API. That is a very simple connection. Let's just open that one so I can show you. it just connects to, well, you can see it up here, api.cloudflare.com. Authentication is anonymous in this case because I am passing in a token in my actual query. So I am passing in that. This is a REST API, and I'm choosing the relative URL giving me the GraphQL endpoint. And then under advanced here is where I choose to pass in the headers, so just my account email and my bearer token that I am passing in. And I'm also passing in the query that we saw in GraphQL. So if I open up this one, this is going to look a little bit messy because I have to pass everything in on one line, basically. I can't have the pretty query sent in. I also need to kind of make sure that it is passed in the proper way from this pipeline to the endpoint. Took a little bit of time to figure that out. But once I have my query in here, I can just use the variables that we saw in that pane in GraphQL previously, but instead of using something hard-coded, I am using the date that I set in the previous variable. So just the same as we saw in the other interface, except that now I'm passing it in through a copy data activity. Once I've done that, I am going to go ahead and load that into my lakehouse, and I am loading that to files. Now, I always like to save a copy of the kind of the data that I get back. So I could have loaded this directly into a table, but I am choosing to load it into a date hierarchy in my file system in my lakehouse. So I am just going to put that into the files folder, into a raw/daily stats folder, and then I'm just creating my date hierarchy with year, month, and day. That means, again, I have all of the raw information in case, some of the tables that I'm working with, sometimes I accidentally delete something that I probably shouldn't have. So as long as I don't delete the file, I can always go ahead and rebuild that. It's just a safeguard for me because I have learned from past mistakes. Once I load it into that archive in my file folder, I go and, let's see if I can expand this one out again. I then go and pick up all of those files in my raw/daily stats folder, and I load it into my daily stats table. This is just showing me all the data from the API from basically all time. I chose to just go ahead and overwrite it every single time. It doesn't take that long for me to load. In a proper project, I would probably have set up some kind of incremental load. But again, this is just my little hobby project, and I'm showing you that you can use Fabric without having to spin up like these perfect architectures and frameworks, right? Use it the way that you get the most value out of it. Once I've done that, I have my data in my lakehouse. So if we open up the lakehouse here, we can see that in my daily stats table, as soon as the preview loads, I don't have that much data in there. It's just slow when we're demoing. There we go. And we can see that I now have all the stats broken down by, the number of requests per country code. We can see the page views per browser that people are using, and then the unique visitors, requests, and page views. So this is just a raw data. And the cool thing about this is that I am going to show you, once you've seen this output here, I'm going to show you that we're not actually doing a whole lot inside of our pipeline, except for one little bit here. We are getting data in as JSON, and it is nested. So I'm getting data for the browser with all the views, and I am getting data for the countries with all of those views. And the pipeline here in the copy data activity can go ahead and flatten that out for me pretty easily. So what I've done here is I just clicked on import schemas. That is just giving me, let's see if we can get a preview up on this. I don't think it's going to show that to me. Here we go. you can maybe see the preview there. So that is just going down into that request hierarchy. So if you remember the preview from GraphQL, you can see data, viewer accounts, and so on and so on. So all the way down here, and then I can just go ahead and map those to my actual columns. So I don't have to do a whole lot to turn this from JSON into a tabular format. It takes care of that for me. I could have done this implicitly as well, but I decided to just go ahead and rename the columns to something that is slightly easier to see than data underscore viewer underscore blah, 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 blah. Shorter names, just easier for me to use. Now, once I have that inside of my lakehouse here in my tables, I can go ahead and visualize that. And if you have noticed something here, I have also created a bit of a more dimensional model that I am currently working on to get things slightly better for more, I would say, real world scenarios. But I am currently just using this daily stats table and my hourly stats table. So same thing there, except we have broken down the stats for each hour. Once I have these tables, it's just a matter of going ahead and visualizing that data. So I can end up with a dashboard that looks something like this. And this is very pretty and pink on my computer. I know the colors are slightly off here, but it looks very nice to me on all my favorite colors here in my dashboard. And this just gives me a nice little overview of how my website is doing. So what you can see here is currently over the last 30 days, my views are trending down, because I haven't done anything. I haven't posted. I haven't brought people into my website. I've been more excited to come here and just hang out with people. So my blog has been, slowly declining. Once I start blogging again, you might see that trending back up. But I can still see that I have unique visitors is trending a little bit up. So while the actual views are going down, I'm getting more unique visitors. So that is kind of cool. Also for me, just to see the total number of visitors, the views, what was my best day in terms of visitors and views, and just a quick note on how I did yesterday. I'm doing that because it's fun for me to see if I post something, I post a new blog post, I share it on LinkedIn or something like that, suddenly you can see a little spike. It's fun. It gives you that little dopamine kick. And I can also see that just looking at my most popular days, Saturdays and Sundays, these are the Norwegian names down here. Saturdays and Sundays, probably not the best days to publish blog posts. People do other things than read technical posts on weekends. So once I've done this, the last thing I am going to show you here is, in addition to this dashboard that I look at on my computer, I use the built-in mobile layout view in Power BI, and I just added the key kind of graphs that I wanted to see in a nice mobile view. So I can open it up on my phone and keep track of that when I'm on the go. So if I'm on the bus going to work or something, you might not be able to see it here, but it's the same view that you can see on the screen. So this is just automatically updated every night with new stats. I can keep track of things on my phone. I also have the dashboard, and it is a fun little project for me to work on the side. So that is pretty much all I have in terms of the demo. So what I want to improve in this case here, this is, I mentioned this, I've started working on a little bit more facts and dimensions instead of just pulling out the raw data and visualizing on top of that. I do want to see more country statistics. I have the data, you saw the data, it's just a matter of time for me to actually go ahead and create that in my report. I would also go ahead and pull out some more data from a different query in my API so I can see the number of views per blog post and see what is my most popular content to see if I can improve that or maybe make that even more useful to my visitors. And then finally, once this starts building up all of these stats over time, I now have data from September 2023, so I can start looking at things over time. I want to do more like year-over-year stats as well, but I do need to build up the data foundation before I can go ahead and do that. So this was just a very quick example of how you can use Fabric for things that are not massive enterprise scale medallion architecture. Use it for the projects where you can get value out of this, and just have fun with it. That is it for me. Thank you so much for attending.